Good morning to the KBLA family.
Councilmember Heather Hutt. Good morning.
Good morning, Dominic.
I am pleased to welcome the new president of the LA City Council, Paul Krakoury. Mr. President, how are you, sir?
Good morning, Tavis. I'm well. Thank you very much.
Holding all politicians accountable to you. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
That's the Godfather of Soul, James Brown. I'm Tavis Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. Over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, President Joe Biden said that he and his family were not having any conversations about a potential 2024 presidential run in America while they were vacationing in Nantucket, Massachusetts. Following the midterm elections, President Biden said he intends to run for re-election, but added that he will make a final decision by early next year. Also over the weekend, California Governor Gavin Newsom said he does not plan to run for president in 2024, even if President Biden chooses not to run. That comment from Governor Newsom is big news. It matters because he's one of the names on the oft-discussed list of potential Democratic candidates come 2024, so take one name off that list. President Biden's approval rating right now sits at about 39%, and multiple polls indicate that Democrats have an appetite for a different candidate in the next presidential election. Today, then, a conversation about the modern presidency. 6 debates that define the institution, including how powerful is the American presidency these days? What's more important in an American president, character or competence? Is presidential success a matter of skill or opportunity? Will future presidents turn away from checks and balances in favor of illiberal democracy? So many questions about the modern presidency. Pleased today to be in conversation for the hour with LMU political science professor and author Michael Genovese. Professor Genovese, how are you today, sir?
I'm terrific, and thank you so much for having me on your radio program, especially because I've often been told that I have a face that is ideally suited to radio.
I've been told that too at points in my life, but I'm delighted to have you on. And radio's good. It's an intimate medium, and people pay attention to it because they're focused on what you're saying and not what you look like. And I've done TV and radio in my entire career, so I'm glad to have you on this radio program on KBLA Talk 1580. Let me start with this. Don't mean to make you too political. We'll get into your book, I promise, in a moment here. But I started suggesting that President Biden has once again said that he is not having conversations at the moment, certainly not over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, about whether he's going to run again. But he's sort of splitting hairs. He said he intends to run for re-election, but that a final decision won't be made until early next year. How do you read that parsing, if you will, from the president?
Well, I think it's a useful parsing because if he does decide he doesn't want to run and announces that early, he becomes immediately a lame duck, and his power is depleted, and his leverage is going to be diminished. And so he needs, as long as he can, to be seen as a player with power, someone who will be there tomorrow. And so he's playing his cards pretty close to the vest, which makes good sense.
Mm-hmm. The polls are pretty clear on this, and there have been a number from New York Times to Washington Post, ABC. I've discussed them on this program, a number of polls that indicate that a majority of Democrats would not be unhappy with another candidate. Not that Joe Biden hasn't done his job. He restored honor back to the White House, and he got us past the Trump era, although Donald Trump, of course, running once again. But many Democrats feel that he did what he was supposed to do in that stopgap measure, if you will. He was a stopgap measure, put another way, to get us beyond the Trump era. But there are Democrats who believe that another candidate would do better this time around, and his poll numbers, the president's that is, poll numbers remaining so low, doesn't aid and abet his case. On the other hand, he's the only person that's beaten Donald Trump. And as you well know, you teach this stuff every day. Incumbency matters. Fundraising matters. And so, there are two sides to this story, as there always are. But how do you read these polls that indicate that many Democrats would not, again, be unhappy with a different candidate?
I think you've stated it beautifully. Biden was brought in to clean the Aegean stables left behind and messed up by Donald Trump, and he did a credible, maybe a very good job of doing that. But that was yesterday. What about tomorrow? His age is a factor. A lot of Democrats are concerned about that. But in terms of his poll numbers, which is your specific question, I'm of the opinion that poll numbers are going to matter less in the future, primarily because there's almost a set number of people who will be against you and a set number for you, and that's not going to fluctuate a lot. You saw that with Donald Trump. He would be 40, 42%, 44% maybe, but he never got to 50%. And I think Biden's going to face the same kind of dilemma, which is that, he's got the Democratic support, certainly not Republican support, and independents are going to be on the fence. And so whereas it used to be a decent measure of your political fortunes, I think today public opinion polling and popularity and approval ratings are less important than they used to be.
I want to come back to that when we move forward here, because there are a couple of questions I want to interrogate you on. And I what you're saying is fascinating for me about, given our reliance on polls, your view that in the future polls are going to be far less important. I want to come back to that in just a second. But your comment when I asked about Biden, that was yesterday, what about tomorrow, reminds me of Bill Clinton for two reasons. One, because, as you recall, Bill Clinton's campaign theme song was "Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow," right? We all know that, number one. But number two, one of the most prescient things I ever heard Bill Clinton say is that every election is about tomorrow, never yesterday. Every election is always about tomorrow, never yesterday. And so I thought about that when you made that comment. One final question about Gavin Newsom, then we'll move on in this conversation. So I mentioned that Gavin Newsom, over the weekend announced that he does not plan to run for president in 2024, even if Joe Biden chooses not to run. That was a bit of a shocker for me. How did you read the governor's comments?
Well, pardon me if I'm not more than a little bit skeptical of his comments. I think, I'm sure that, like most senators, Gavin Newsom wakes up every morning, looks at the mirror, and sees a president. And that's kind of the pattern. And he's poised and positioned well to be a serious candidate. The fourth biggest economy in the world in California. He's got the sort of the glamour, the television look. He's young enough, so he's got that vigor, going Kennedy-esque in some ways. Some maybe he's too slick, some would say. But he's one of those people that would be right at the beginning considered seriously by the great mentioner, and consequently, it would be so hard for him to turn his back on that. How many opportunities do you get?
Yeah.
How many openings are there? Let us say he passes on 2024. Does he have to wait till 2032? I mean, I just don't know if he wants to take that risk. It's also a risk if he runs. But I think if Biden says no, that opens the door. Kamala Harris is not in the strongest position, although she's probably would be the front runner from day one. And then there are all these other figures, the Buttigieg's, the Klobuchar's, and there's going to be one or two people that we haven't thought about who are going to make a dent. And so I think by all means, someone like a Gavin Newsom should be skeptical, should be very deliberate, but I just can't see how you say no.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I don't. I like Gavin Newsom, but I don't trust him. Not on this, at least. If Joe Biden says he ain't running, I think Gavin Newsom's going to change his mind. And of course, the way they frame it all the time is, I said I wasn't going to run, but I'm being drafted. I'm being drafted by the people to run, and so I'm throwing my name in the ring. So I don't believe Gavin Newsom on that. If the president says he's not going to run early next year, we'll see. what Joe Biden will, in fact, say after the first of the year. He's promised to give an answer about whether he's going to run, although it said, again, he says he intends to run, but a final decision early next year. And the parsing, as you heard Professor Genovese say, works for the moment, but it's just a matter of time before he's going to have to make a statement one way or the other. And, of course, we'll be here to cover it right here on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward in conversation with Dr. Michael Genovese, we'll talk about his new book, The Modern Presidency, 6 Debates That Define the Institution. He is a professor of political science and the Loyola Chair of Leadership Studies, director of the Institute for Leadership Studies, and president of the Global Policy Institute, all at LMU. He's a busy guy at LMU, but he's taking out an hour of his time to talk to us. We'll get right back to it when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Congratulations to this week's KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week, LA County Department of Children and Family Services. LA County Department of Children and Family Services promotes child safety and well-being by partnering with communities to strengthen family. Congratulations, LA County DCFS.
Did you know addiction to drugs like meth or cocaine is a disease and not a choice? But getting help is. If you have stimulant use disorder, you, your family, and friends may have a lot of questions, including where to start. Choose Change California can help. Make a change today and find a proven treatment option for you at choosechangeca.org.
We're all about a luxe kind of holiday. That's why at Ulta Beauty, we have all the scents of the season, like fabulous fragrances from YSL, Valentino, and Ariana Grande, plus so much more. And to make things a little sweeter, with a fragrance purchase of $65 or more, you'll get a free plush robe or throw, a $60 value, our treat. Because our kind of holiday is you having your kind of holiday. So don't wait. Visit your local Ulta Beauty or buy online and pick up in store. Ulta Beauty, the possibilities are beautiful.
Sanctuary of Hope invites you to come out, support Homeless Youth Awareness Month at a candlelight, interfaith prayer, and youth voice reflections, Tuesday, November 29th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. For more info, visit thesoh.org. Did you know a housing crisis puts young people at huge risk of more violence and trauma? And right now, young people and their children need support more than ever. Prevention services such as financial assistance, education, employment support, and mental health well-being are main drivers of impact. Contact thesoh.org for more information. Did you know an estimated 4.2 million youth and young adults experience homelessness, of which 700,000 are unaccompanied minors? The pathway to functional zero is prevention. More info at thesoh.org. Again, thesoh.org.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Our guest in this hour is LMU Professor of Political Science, Dr. Michael Genovese. His new text is called The Modern Presidency, 6 Debates That Define the Institution. We were talking about Joe Biden a moment ago. As you heard Professor Genovese say, though, it's never about yesterday. It's always about tomorrow. And we want to talk in this hour about the modern presidency as we move forward and what it will become in the days and months and years ahead. Before I jump into the book, Professor Genovese, I want to come back, as I said, to the argument you were making about poll numbers. And I'm fascinated by this because we seem to live by polls, although they sometimes get things wrong. But at the end of the day, we become so reliant on polls in our politics. Everything is an exit poll, an entrance poll. We live by these numbers. We see elections that are called before the polls are closed based on numbers. So tell me why you, first of all, let me ask 2 questions. One, do you think we've become too reliant on polls in our politics, number one? And number 2, unpack for me a great deal more about why you think poll numbers in the days and years ahead will be far less relevant.
Well, Tavis, in a celebrity culture, we want to know who's up, who's down, who's popular, who the new star is, the new thing this month. And so we look to polls and we look to what other people say and what other people think. And it becomes a shortcut, both in culture and in politics, a shortcut that replaces thinking. Oh, this person's up. Okay, that's the one I guess I'm supposed to like. But I think, polls are ubiquitous in society, and they're becoming, I think, less important politically in terms of presidents. And by that I mean that presidents are never going to be able to have the kind of popularity they used to have at least not for the foreseeable future, because our politics are so divided, so hyper-partisan, and we rigidly just reject the other. That whether you're a Democrat, you would reject Trump. If you're a Republican, you reject Biden. And so there's very little wiggle room in terms of, oh, well, you do well, I'm going to give you my support. You do well, we deny that you do well. And so I think for presidents, popularity, approval ratings are much less important as a measure of what they're doing, how effective they are, or where they might be in the future. Because right now, Joe Biden is being compared to an ideal opponent. What happens when it becomes, a me versus you? Well, at that point, then, if you look and you say, well, he's running again against, Donald Trump, he's starting to look really good. And so I don't put a lot of stock in approval ratings. And I think until we break this hyper-partisan addiction that we have, which is poisonous, I think we're going to be in a position where polls don't really tell us a lot about the presidents.
Yep. Let me try this on for size. As you were talking about poll numbers becoming less and less relevant in the years ahead, I thought of this analogy, and you tell me, you're the professor, I'm the student here. You tell me whether or not this analogy makes any sense to you at all. I thought about the future of this democracy in the same way that the U.S. Senate operated for the last couple of years, which is to say that the Senate is sort of evenly split, like the country is, as you call, we are hyperpartisan and we're addicted to our hyperpartisanship. So the Senate is divided like the country is. And in a divided Senate, you get one or two people who wield an unusual amount of power. We know those persons to have been Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Because the Senate is so divided, one or two people get this extreme amount of power, and they ultimately determine the future in many respects of our democracy. That just upset me. I understand how the process works, but it just troubles me that one or two senators can ultimately determine whether or not voting rights get passed, run the list of things that didn't get done in this U.S. Senate over the last term. We talked about this some in our first hour today. But one or two people end up with all of this, outsized power because things are so divided, which leads me now to take that analogy and apply it to the nation as I see it. If the nation continues, to your point, to be as divided as we are, that suggests to me that a small number of people in certain pockets here and there ultimately control our politics. And when you control the politics, you end up controlling our future. Does that make any sense to you at all as an analogy?
It makes good sense because, we really are a 50-50 nation. And that allows for one or two people to hold a president hostage. In the case of the Democrats, you said it, Manchin and Sinema. That's partly why Georgia is such an important Senate race come a week from Tuesday.
Right.
Because that would give Biden one more vote, and therefore one person like a Joe Manchin can't hold him captive. But again, it's exactly because of the reason that you said. The parties today are so different, and the parties are so closely matched in numbers that no matter what happens, a 50-50 nation, it's easy to have deadlock. It's easy to have gridlock. It's easy to have a veto power over whatever is done. And so until we as a people decide where we want to go, we're going to still be in this dilemma of a 50-50 nation.
But if we stay deadlocked in this way, and I'm right about the fact, like the Senate, a handful of people then determine the future of this democracy, what does that ultimately say about our democracy?
Well, I think it shows the fundamental flaws, and it's a problem of institutionalism, and it's a problem of our politics and our culture. When you have a Senate that has a 60-vote requirement to get anything done, that's not in the Constitution. It's really anti-democratic. But we have so many rules and procedures set up to prevent change, and not to be too professorial, but the framers who invented this system were afraid of change. They were afraid of the people taking over. Democracy was a dirty word in those days. It was often said democracy. They used the word mobocracy, and there was a real fear of the masses because there were more of them than there were of the people who were the owners. And I'm not trying to make a Marxist spiel here, but it's very clear that the interests were in conflict, and the framers were more concerned with stability and protecting liberty than with efficiency in government. They didn't want the government to be able to act too quickly, certainly not by the whim of the people. And so they made it hard for people to lead our system. They made it hard to change things. That was their intent. Today, we say, oh, well, we've got a crisis, we need to change it, and we can't hardly ever deal with those crises. So it really debilitates us, puts us in a straitjacket.
It's the perfect way to frame it. We are in a straitjacket, and I never heard it put so simply and so poignantly. We are in a political straitjacket, as it were, and I couldn't agree more. Let me move now right into your text, because this conversation we're having now is a nice segue into one of these 6 principles around which you frame this text. We want to have time to do all 6, and I wouldn't anyway, because I want to help you sell your book, and I want to give all the book away, but I do want to pick a few of these out and give you a chance to unpack it for us in this hour. So as we're talking now, it seems to me that the principle that I want to go to first, these 6 debates that define the institution as laid out in your book, The Modern Presidency, is: will the future of the U.S. presidency be one of liberal democracy or illiberal democracy, given all we've just discussed a moment ago? Take it away, Professor Genovese.
Well, you've hit on the most important of the debates, and it's the last one I deal with in the book. And it's not about America alone. Sometimes when I talk about the rise of illiberalism or authoritarianism is the cruder way to put it, people say, oh, you're just picking on Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a symptom. Mm-hmm. He's not the cause. He's not the person who led us into this. The cause is bigger and broader, and it's global. You look across the globe at all these democracies that are turning towards authoritarian rule: Hungary, Poland, maybe Italy. You see a little bit of an inkling of it happening perhaps in France, certainly in Russia. And you see strong men, and we do mean men, who command attention and exude power. And their argument is liberal democracies, the rule of law, checks and balances, separation of powers, hasn't worked for the people. So let me overcome those checks and balances and govern for you, the people. Donald Trump said that, basically. Donald Trump met institutions that were a little stronger than he was. Thankfully, the liberal democracy was preserved. But in countries like Hungary, it's not being saved. In Poland, it's not. And so this big global phenomenon is a function of globalization. It's a function of global economies. It's a function of democracies not. And this is actually an important issue that the right, I think, is correct about. Governments have not served the interests of the common citizen, of the working man and woman. And so those people say, look, the government is set up to support elites. It's against us. And so damn the system. I want a strong man to come in and represent me. Enter Donald Trump. Enter, all these right-wing or authoritarian populists. Now, that isn't to say that this is all a function of right-wing populism. There are left-wing examples of this in Mexico and in history. So, it's not a left-right thing. It's a question of, do you want to preserve a liberal democracy and the rule of law, as messy as that is, as slow as it is? I mean, it was Churchill who said democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the other ones invented. And he also said that governing in a democracy is like paddling a leaky raft. You get where you're going very slowly, but you're always having your feet wet. And is that enough? People want answers now. We live in an instant culture. They want instant gratification. And therefore, the promises of the strong man, I'm going to build a wall and solve the problem, it's appealing in a very superficial way. It's not a solution. It's not an answer. But that's the great debate that we are having today, and it's a global debate. And Lincoln talked about it back in the 1830s when he said that democracy's great threat is not from anyone from the outside conquering us. It's from inside of us. And the great speech at Gettysburg, where he tried to sort of honor the dead who gave themselves. And Lincoln said, this whole war is based on a proposition. The proposition that you could have a government based on of the people, by the people, and for the people. And if we don't win this war, that government, that idea, that proposition may perish from the face of the earth. We're facing a similar kind of situation globally today.
Let me ask this question, looking at my clock here. Got about 2 minutes before news, traffic, and sports, but let me get started. We'll continue, as I suspect we'll need to, on the other side. What makes us better than anybody else? I know we believe in this notion of American exceptionalism, which troubles me. We ain't got time to have that debate. But what makes us better than anybody else, which is to say, if other countries are having a difficult time resisting authoritarianism, Trump gave us just a taste of it. But if other countries are turning to that because they don't have the patience, they want answers now, bring on the strong man. If others are having trouble resisting, how do you think we can resist long term?
Well, number one, Joe Biden, I think, gave us part of the answer, which is we have to make government work for the people. Mm-hmm. And that's always been the problem of government, especially democratic governments. How do you make it work for the people? Our great presidents did that. Franklin Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln. Their goal was to help make government work for and help the people. And that's why they're considered great presidents. They succeeded at doing that. If we can't do that, if democracy fails us, we fail democracy.
Yep. I guess the question when we come forward then that I want to come right to is how in this present moment in late modernity do we have a proper conversation about the proper role of government? Every one of us believes that government has a role to play. I mean, Republicans, Democrats, we just think government ought to do different things. But everybody believes that there is a proper role for government to play. The question is, in this moment, in a country that is this divided, how do we go about having in the public square a real meaningful conversation, a progressive conversation? I don't mean politically progressive. I mean a conversation that advances us. How do we have a conversation about what the proper role of government ought to be? How do we have that kind of civil discourse? We'll continue with these 6 debates. We've covered one that Professor Michael Genovese unpacks in his new book, The Modern Presidency. 6 debates that define the institution. More with Dr. Genovese when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Mike Moore, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Global health experts are renaming monkeypox Mpox over concerns the original name could be viewed as racist and stigmatizing. The World Health Organization announced it will begin using Mpox following a series of consultations with experts. Both names will be used simultaneously for a year while monkeypox is phased out. Russia still hasn't come back with a serious response when it comes to the prisoner swap for African-American Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan. That's according to a top American official who spoke to a Russian state media outlet. Charge d'affaires Elizabeth Rood said the U.S. has put forward a serious proposal in addition to other plans to free Griner and Whelan. Rood also gave an update on Griner, saying the WNBA star is healthy and doing as well as can be expected. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Got a vehicle that rolled over in South LA, 110 southbound near Martin Luther King Jr. Looks like that's blocking the express lanes. Right now, the 110 is stop and go from Exposition Boulevard, but they could push back in towards downtown LA. Got an accident in Pico Rivera, 605 southbound from Washington Boulevard. Right now, the 2 left lanes are jammed up, and that's got you messed up starting at Beverly Boulevard. Really heavy drive there. And we got the crash in Ontario, still blocking the fast lane, 15 northbound past the 60. Brake lights start at Limonite Avenue.
Don't let a traffic accident ruin your day. Call 1-800-INFO-FIX to find the nearest Fix Auto location. Their highly trained and certified technicians will have you back on the road in no time. You have a choice on who fixes your vehicle. Tell your insurance agent you want to go to Fix Auto.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Chargers make a clutch 2-point conversion with 15 seconds left to pull out a 25-24 win at Arizona. 5 straight losses for the Rams. They lose by 16 at Kansas City. USC has moved up to 4th in this week's AP College Football Rankings. It's the highest ranking for the 11-1 Trojans since 2016. Undefeated Jackson State, ranked 5th in Division I AA, will play Southern for the SWAC Championship on Saturday, December 3rd. The Clippers get a career-high 31 points and 29 rebounds from Avika Zubac in a 14-point win over Indiana. Zubac's 29 rebounds is the most in an NBA game this season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're a slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
Leaving things half done? Not a good option. Like a half-baked peach cobbler.
A gummy crust? I don't think so.
A half-done hairdo.
All done.
Shouldn't the curls be on both sides?
Or a half of a domino.
Damn! Big six!
But where's the other half?
Don't go halfway, especially with your immunity to COVID-19. Keep everyone safer this season by staying up to date with your vaccines and boosters. Visit myturn.ca.gov to find one near you. Brought to you by the California Department of Public Health.
On Saturday, December 3rd, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., come out and enjoy a free community health fair, co-sponsored by Pleasant Hill Baptist Church Health Ministry and the Central Neighborhood Health Foundation. The fair will be held on the church grounds at 2009 West Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, with free health screenings, refreshments, jumpers for the kids, a visit from Santa, entertainment with a DJ, free food giveaway for the first 100 people who attend, as well as raffles and other prizes. There will also be open enrollment, health insurance representatives present. Attendees can get free blood pressure, glucose, HIV and STD testing, a dental screening, fluoride varnish, COVID testing, vaccines and boosters. Flu shots will also be offered. Housing navigation, mental health support, and education services will be available. Don't miss this free community health fair. Tell somebody and receive the gift of preventative health services this season. See you all on Saturday, December 3rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 2009 West Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Los Angeles.
Did you know it pays to drive electric? With government rebates, you'll save thousands on the purchase of a new or used EV. And the more you drive, the more you'll save, both on fuel and maintenance far into the future. Start seeing savings today. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Be heard. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. He's Dr. Michael Genovese, professor of political science at LMU, also chair of leadership studies and director of the Institute for Leadership Studies and president of the Global Policy Institute at LMU, a busy man at LMU. But thankfully, an hour of his schedule today is being given to us to talk about his new book. It's called The Modern Presidency, 6 Debates That Define the Institution. We just talked about before news, traffic, and sports, whether or not the future of the U.S. presidency will be one of liberal democracy or illiberal democracy. And I said a moment ago, Professor Genovese, I wanted to come back to this point about how we go about in this era where we are having this sort of hyper-partisan addiction that you referenced a moment ago, how we go about having a conversation, a legitimate conversation about what the proper role of government ought to be. As I said a moment ago, everyone believes there's a role for government to play. It's just we all want government to do the things that we want it to do and don't want it to do the things we don't want it to do. We're divided right down the middle, basically, in this country with a handful of people sort of controlling our future, as it were. How do we go about having a proper conversation about the right role of government in our lives?
Well, Tavis, I think a lot of it depends on civility.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that's not missing from our society, but is in short supply. And instead of shouting at each other and instead of assuming the evil nature of the other, I think we just need to understand that we all have something to bring to the table. And you may have X, I may have Y. Why can't we discuss it? And maybe we can come to some kind of an accommodation. I may not be able to convince you. You may not be able to convince me. But there are so many things that we have common interests about, and we need to focus more on those things than on the things that divide us. That's a simple way to put it. It's also kind of pie in the sky, because there are many people out there who don't want to have a civil discussion. They shouters and screamers, they get attention. You know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and that's the nature of the news industry. That, you know, if it bleeds, it leads. And we need to get back to this notion that democracy is about conversations, and it's about consensus and agreement instead of about winning and losing. I'm
thinking now, pivoting here, I'm thinking now about the race for presidency the race for the Democratic nomination, actually, between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. We all know that Obama came out the winner of that fight for the Democratic Party's nomination. But I'm remembering, as you will recall, the debate that Hillary and Barack had back and forth. And every time she would say experience matters, he would basically say vision matters. She had experience. She'd been there. She had the knowledge. She had the know-how. And he kept saying, yes, I haven't been there as long as she's been there, but vision matters. Ideas matter. And that word change became the word for his campaign. I come to that because there are a number of these debates in your text, The Modern Presidency, 6 debates that define the institution, that give us this sort of either-or dynamic. One of the questions is, one of the debates, I should say, is, what is more important, power or persuasion? What matters more, the individual or the institution? What is more valuable, character or competence? What is more important, skill or opportunity? I don't know. I could pick any one of these given the way I just teed it up with the Clinton and Obama back and forth about leadership versus experience. I guess I'll start with this. What is more important, power or persuasion?
That's a sort of an inside baseball political science kind of question, because for years and years, presidency scholars have followed the teachings of Richard Neustadt from Harvard University, who back in the 1960s had a book called Presidential Power, who said that presidents are institutionally weak, so they have to be politically strong, and they get politically strong through persuasion. And that view dominated the studies of the presidency. But in about the last 15 years, the concerns have shifted more towards the uses of power, the independent authority that a president has. Now, it's stated as an either-or proposition, but in the book, most of the conclusions that I reach are that it's not either-or, it's both. You teed it up by saying, Obama versus Clinton experience, versus ideals and hope. It's not one or the other. I think it's essential that the president be a person who is able to. It is rocket science. Being president is rocket science, and you have to balance 47 balls and juggle them in the air all at once. And experience is important, but vision is important. Hope is important. The ability to draw people in is important. The ability to compromise is important. The ability to process complex information. I mean, there's so many things that are important. So life is not an either-or proposition. And the presidency, more than anything, is not an either-or institution.
I had a guest on this program some weeks ago, used the word hope a moment ago, and my team and I are still sort of talking about this. This guest introduced the word into our conversation, hopium, like opium, but hopium. And that word has resonated with me for the last few weeks, this notion of hopium that many of us are sort of addicted to in this country. And I'm wondering how you see that. Put another way, since you invoked the word hope, whether or not you think that Americans are entering a phase where we have just lost hope about the vibrancy, the future vibrancy of this democracy. Let me add this before you respond. We discussed a poll not long ago on this program that found that for the first time ever, they've been taking this poll for quite some time now, but for the first time ever, they found that a majority of Americans think that our best days as a nation are behind us. We'll come back to the presidency in just a second. But if a majority of our fellow citizens, Professor Genovese, believe that our best days are behind us, we're going to need some hopium around here. But your take on that, since you used the word hope a moment ago.
I think hopium is a great word, and I'm going to steal it.
I stole it. You can have it too. Yeah,
that's right. It belongs to the people.
Yeah.
Without hope, all is lost. Period. Lincoln knew that. Jefferson knew that. FDR knew that. Obama knew that. Because we cling to hope. We cling to hope because we're human, and we need to believe that tomorrow will be and can be better. And it's up to our leaders to tell us, show us how it can be better. What will it take to get us to point X? What will it cost us? How do we get from A to B? And great leaders understand that. I'm going to use Ronald Reagan as an example of a president who was able to articulate a vision that animated followers. Now, I didn't follow that vision, But boy, was he able to get people to follow that vision. And it was a positive vision. Donald Trump, on the other hand, had a very negative vision. And his wasn't based on hope. And that's why I was actually shocked that he won back in 16, because almost all the time leaders who present a case for hope tend to do very well. Donald Trump made a case for, resentment and for anger, and he won, and that was shocking. And that was, I think, a reflection of what you've asked me, which is, how do we get by without hope? I think we caved in under Donald Trump and gave into this sense in which government is not about us coming together and solving our problems. It's about getting our enemies. If we do maintain that view, and if we do believe, as the polls are saying, you're correct, that I don't think tomorrow is going to be better. If that disease infects us, it will be like pollution that continues to spread, and that is what I said earlier when Lincoln said that I'm not worried about anyone coming from the outside and destroying our democracy. I'm worrying about us destroying ourselves. And that's the only enemy that we have to fear, FDR said, was fear itself. I think that the thing we have to fear most is this loss in belief in our future. And if that's the case, then we become cynical, and we start to see the world as hostile, and we start to see enemies everywhere, and then we start to see the victory of cynicism over hope.
Yep. I say all the time on this program that skepticism is healthy. Cynicism is dangerous. I'm all for being skeptical and raising a legitimate question. So skepticism is healthy. Cynicism is dangerous, and it sounds like you and I are in agreement on that particular point. Since you mentioned Donald Trump, it leads me to one of the other debates in this book, The Modern Presidency, 6 debates that define the institution. What is more valuable, character or competence? And I might add, Donald Trump was lacking in both areas, character and competence. But it's your book, it's your debate. What is more valuable these days when we elect presidents, character or competence?
One of the things I hate to talk about in class is this question of character, because we find no correlation between high character and high performance. Some of our greatest presidents had deep character flaws. FDR was I don't want to say habitual liar, but he once said, I'm the juggler. I never want to let my left hand know what my right hand's doing. Politics does have its smarmy side. It has its dirty side. We call it the dirty hands dilemma, that presidents have to do things that aren't always, of the highest moral quality. But I think the whole question of character is a difficult one for us to deal with because, for example, Bill Clinton cheated on his wife. Does that disqualify him? Richard Nixon, I'm sure, never cheated on his wife. But what Bill Clinton was doing to women, Richard Nixon was doing to the country. And so, personal character does not always translate into the presidency. And that bothers me because I want to believe that good people are needed. What we really need are people who are capable, who can get things done, but have a vision and a goal that's very positive and constructive. And along the way, they might do some things that are not completely above board. For example, we live in a very dangerous world, and sometimes we have people who want to do us harm. Machiavelli told us back in the 1500s, being a good person and turning the other cheek means that you're going to get slapped on the other cheek and your country's going to be taken over by people who will be very evil. And so sometimes you have to meet evil with evil. Sometimes you have to do things that are unsavory. And so the whole question is, where are you grounded? Where are you centered? Are you centered in a view that like Lincoln, I only do these things because they're necessary and because they're for this greater good. Yeah. And the problem for Lincoln was that he knew that he couldn't be the ultimate judge of that. Because we can't be judges in our own cases. So once the Congress came into session after he started to act, he brought it to Congress and said, look, I've done these things. You have to approve them. If you don't approve them, we stop. And so there were the checks and balances. But Lincoln acted in the emergency and understood that, and it was great humility, that I don't have all the answers. You have to help me. Yeah.
You mentioned moral quality. You mentioned that presidents oftentimes have to do things that are unsavory. Again, not long ago on this program, I had Professor Lewis V. Baldwin brilliant professor emeritus now at Vanderbilt University. He is a King Scholar, as in MLK. He's a Dr. King Scholar, and he posed a question to me or made a statement to me some time ago that I'm still wrestling with. And his statement was essentially this. He says, Tavis, I do not believe that a true Christian could be president of these United States. I do not believe that a true Christian could ever be president of these United States. Take that comment from Professor Baldwin and link it to what Professor Genovese just said about what presidents have to do, and you understand Baldwin's point. I digress. We'll continue when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA Talk 1580 invites you to join us in celebrating the season of giving by being part of the solution. As we enjoy great food, family, warmth, and well wishes in whatever our festive tradition may be, we share the beauty of the season by reaching out to the less fortunate. Please help us to help others with the KBLA Cover the Houseless Cozy Community Coat and Blanket Drive. All you have to do is drop off new or clean, gently used winter coats and blankets in the KBLA lobby during business hours, now through December 20th. All of the coats and blankets will be donated to unsheltered individuals and families experiencing houselessness. Simply bring your donation to 4434 Crenshaw Boulevard in Los Angeles, near Vernon Avenue, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays. That's 4434 Crenshaw in historic Leimert Park. During the holidays and every day, let's remember, we keep us safe. We keep us warm. We are the safety net, and together we can cover the unsheltered. Get caught up in the spirit of the season, the spirit of love. Make a difference with your friends at KBLA Talk 1580.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here for JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour, where KBLA's very own Lynn Richardson was a keynote speaker. Here's what Lynn had to say when asked what the top 3 tips were for someone beginning their journey to financial freedom.
The first one would definitely absolutely be to write what it is that you want. The things that I wrote when I was broke, down, under the ground, didn't know how I was going to make it, are happening today. And they're actually bigger than I ever thought. The dreams that I had, it didn't seem possible, but I had the wherewithal to write it. Thoughts disentangle themselves when they pass through your fingertips. So when you see what it is that you want, it becomes more real. The second thing is to speak what you seek until you see what you say. Get rid of haters, naysayers, blockers, and crab barrel leg pullers. Don't get mad at them. Just detach and find your crew. And the third thing is to get started at JP Morgan Chase. And get all of those accounts that you need to save, to spend, and to pay your bills.
Less BS per broadcast. Fewer microaggressions per megawatt. KBLA Talk 1580.
The book is called The Modern Presidency, 6 Debates That Define the Institution. The author of that book is LMU political science professor, Dr. Michael Genovese. Dr. Genovese, let me come to this debate in your text. What matters more, the individual or the institution? On balance, that question seems like a silly question. We know what the answer should be, but it's not silly. You spent a whole chapter talking about it. So tell me more about what matters more, the individual or the institution.
I think the way that I can best explain that is by asking you to think about Donald Trump. When Donald Trump was elected, there were a lot of us who were very suspicious and worried. And we were told, don't worry, the institution will manage him. The institution will take care of his rougher edges. And to some extent, it did. I mean, Donald Trump, when he wanted to remove all troops from North Korea, and one of his cabinet members walked over to his desk and took the piece of paper with the order on it away and left the room. So in some senses, the institution is a powerful guiding point for a president and a limiting point as well as a liberating one. But clearly the individual has an incredible impact. The individual can shape behavior, as you saw, again, with Donald Trump. Donald Trump said, I want a ban on all Muslims coming into the country. That became his policy. And the institution could not resist. And so there's always a tension. Hopefully it's a creative tension. Sometimes it's a debilitating tension between the interests of the president as an individual and the interests of the presidency as an institution, which is an ongoing institution. And so who should be governing? Well, we elect a president to govern. But the institutional side of the presidency has always been a source of great difficulty for presidents, partly because our presidents tend not to be able to spend much time managing their institutions. And so they sometimes are victims to those institutions.
Yeah. Two final questions about the institution when we come forward in our remaining moments with Dr. Michael Genovese on KBLA Talk 1580.
We may be LA's newest talk station, but when you're punching above your weight, it's not about whether you can throw a punch. Can you take a punch? We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. And we don't black down.
Health is Wealth and Medicare and Covered California's open enrollment for medical insurance is here. RHJ Insurance Agency can help you find affordable rates and the plan that's just right for you and your family. Call 562-204-6120 for your free quote. Don't leave your health to chance. Open enrollment is here and affordable coverage is just a phone call away. Call 562-204-6120 for your free quote and get the coverage you need. Go to www.rhjins.com.
If you have certain chronic conditions such as heart disease,
asthma,
diabetes, and you're 19 years of age or older,
52, 36,
42, you may be at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine, a Pfizer vaccine that can help protect against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. The most commonly reported side effect was pain at the injection site. For additional common side effects and full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
I'm going to ask my doctor about getting vaccinated
with Prevnar 20.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Nacho fries are back at Taco Bell. You know, the fries covered in bold Mexican spices you dip in a warm nacho cheese sauce. You could also dunk them in nacho cheese sauce or pour the sauce onto a pile of them and create like a nacho fries nachos. The thing is that you eat them with nacho cheese sauce. That's what makes them nacho fries. Otherwise, you're just eating fries and sipping on nacho cheese sauce, and that's the wrong way. Sorry, just really passionate about nacho fries.
Nacho fries are back, only at Taco Bell. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only while supplies last. Contact local store for hours and participation which vary.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
Got a little less than 4 minutes left for Professor Genovese in our conversation. I've enjoyed the hour, but less than 4 minutes left. Let me see if I can get out two questions right quick. Number one, I find that at times we have a difficulty separating the president from the presidency. I got in some trouble during the Obama era trying to hold him accountable, and my response to people was very simply this: as long as this black man is the head of the American empire, you have to have a critique. You cannot not have a critique of any president who's the head of the American empire. And people oftentimes took my words and couldn't separate my critique of the presidency versus the president. They're not the same thing. Your thoughts?
You're right, and it was the great John Gardner said, America is full of unloving critics and uncritical lovers. We need to be, and you use the words, not cynical, but a little skeptical. We need to be skeptical, even when our person is in the White House, especially when our person is in the White House. Can't give anyone a free pass. It's too damn important.
Nope, I take you on that. My final question, the exit question today, is back to the institution. We asked earlier, what matters more? One of the debates in your book, what matters more, the individual or the institution? And my thought was, you were talking that a lot of people no longer trust our institutions. beyond the presidency. They don't trust the presidency, the executive branch. They don't trust the legislative branch. They sure as heck these days don't trust the judicial branch. I was reading some stats the other day that the branch of our society now that people still have some trust in is the military, and that's a little scary. I digress on that for the moment. But people writ large, not just the presidency, don't seem to trust institutions, period, Professor Genovese.
And you can't govern if, number one, trust is so low, and number two, you have divided government. And that trust started to explode after Vietnam and Watergate in the 1970s, when you saw a dramatic decline to the point now where trust is the currency of democracy, and if trust is low, democracy is in trouble.
What say you then about the future of the American presidency? We saw Trump push the envelope completely off the table. Biden sort of brought it back and has done his job. But writ large, what say you about the future of the American presidency?
I'm just a blind optimist. I say that right at the beginning. I think that our best days are ahead of us. I think we'll get through this. I think we'll be stronger. I think we'll be better. And I think the world needs us to be leaders. As flawed as we are, as many mistakes as we make, who better than us?
And how fragile, to your mind, you're an optimist, I hear, but to your mind, how fragile is our democracy?
It's teetering right now, but it's at the low point. And I think, Donald Trump is in our rearview mirror, hopefully, and that will be a big step in strengthening democracy. So I'm very, very optimistic.
Dr. Michael Genovese, professor of political science at LMU, Loyola Marymount University. His book is called The Modern Presidency, 6 Debates That Define the Institution. We've teed up some of those. For all the rest of them, pick up a copy of the text. Once again, it's called The Modern Presidency, 6 Debates That Define the Institution. Professor Genovese, good to have you on this program, sir. All the best to you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Tavis.
The final hour, Tavis Smiley, when we come forward, we'll have a conversation about why intelligence isn't enough. Intelligence is not enough if you're a black professional in the workplace. We'll talk about that when we come forward after News, Traffic, and Sports on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore, and here's the